All right. We are live. I thought I would do something out of character and start early for a change, but that means that there might be a few people who are still going to stream in late. So, casual, very casual short stream I'm doing tonight. As a lot of you know, I've cut back dramatically on streaming, had to go on a hiatus from my regular show with the wonderful Brett Dasovic. And so right now what I'm trying to do is just when I can, when I have some time, get in some short videos, short streams on certain topics. And so today I have a night off and I thought, wow, well, I just kicked up some controversy on Twitter with Chrissie Mayr or Mar. Some of you are going to think, and I hate this, but some of you are going to think that I'm being deliberately disrespectful to her not knowing how to pronounce her last name. But I truly still, even though we're in a Twitter spat, no, it's not. I mean, I don't have any, I really made her angry apparently, but I don't really have anything more to say than basically the comment that I made. And then I replied to her tweet. But I don't really have anything else to say on that. But I thought, okay, since I've got some controversy going on right now, maybe this is a good time to come on and explain myself. Um, I see one of the comments here says, I love you, Johnny. You are a beautiful soul and a beautiful man. I would love to meet you, but I know that's not possible. I'm not in your circle. Love, always, Patty. Well, Patty, I hope you don't think Johnny Depp is actually coming on, though. I know I was looking at the title when I was making the titles of this. It says the latest on controversies with Johnny Depp. I thought, I wonder if someone's going to think that Johnny Depp's actually going to be phoning into this show. Alas, no. But if he does watch my stuff, then he will see your lovely comment. So thank you for that. Yeah, so this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to, and it's called a hit and run because I just want to get to these topics, say what I have to say, and then move on quickly. Hello to everyone joining us. So, yes, I'm going to talk about someone tell me how to pronounce her last name because it's disrespectful for me not to continue to not know. So, someone tell me, is it Chrissie Mayr or Chrissie Mar? All right. Really not. In this instance, I'm really not being sarcastic. It's just that I only follow her through her tweets. And I'll explain how this came to be in a moment, but I really have never heard someone actually say her name. I have a friend. Well, I have a friend who really likes her. He watches her, listens to her, whatever. But I can't remember how he pronounces it. So anyway, someone, if you know, tell me how to pronounce her last name. But yeah, we got into a bit of a Twitter spat or whatever. I got her riled up on Twitter. But I wanted to also talk about, in addition to the whole debate, the abortion debate, and my interactions with her, I want to talk about Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood because there have been a couple of developments that people are asking me to speak on. One of which being that Evan Rachel Wood is off Instagram right now, so her page is off. She's taken it down or deactivated it or whatever. But not with any explanation or anything. So I'm skeptical. I'll talk about this a little later, but I'm skeptical about getting too excited about it. That like it means something like she's changing her ways, or she's finally figured out that what she's doing to Marilyn Manson with this whole Me Too hoax is awful, or that there's something, and I think a lot of people are hoping this, that there's something going on with the legal proceedings between the two of them. He's suing her, that has made her suddenly think, okay, maybe it's time to stop defaming this man. But it also could be something with her ex-husband because, Jamie Bell, because that she was withholding his child from him, their child, and then he was given primary custody by the courts because of her craziness and so forth. So it could be something with them. She's been dissing him. Evan Rachel Wood has been dissing him a lot in ways that are somewhat subtle, although when you talk about a narcissistic co-parent over and over and over, narcissistic co-parent, these ways that she not so subtly refers to him, I don't think it's very subtle anymore. And then she might have something going on with her parents too, because some of the things that she's been posting on Instagram indicate that she's got some issues with one or both of her parents. So I don't know. We'll talk about it more later, but this is what I said today: is that this woman she's crazy and she has so much drama on so many fronts in her life that who knows, what's going on or why she took it down, or even if I don't know, maybe she wasn't even the one who took it down. Maybe there's some issue with Instagram. I don't know. So that happened. Johnny Depp, his movie Jean de Barry, that premiered at Cannes Film Festival, almost a year ago. That is finally hitting UK theaters and maybe home streaming in the United States very soon, right? And so I thought we'd talk about that just a little bit. And then World War III, which it seems like there are a number of people who are like actually like excited at the prospect of this. They don't come out and say it, but I totally agree with what that umbrella guy said, Tug. He tweeted something to the effect of he is really tired, and I'm paraphrasing, but Tug is really tired of all of these warmonger commentators online who seem really excited about the prospect of a war between Israel and Iran and a world war the same way that they'd be excited about like a UFC fight or something. And Tug was saying that he's sick of this, or he's weary of it, or he wants no part of it. And I really like those sentiments. I really agree with it. And that's not to say that I don't care about what's going on in the world, but I'll talk about that in a little while. So those are the topics. So, the first thing with Chrissie, did we ever figure out what her name is? Oh, I'm really not trying to be insulting here. I could look it up. All right. Well, here's what I'm just going to say, Chrissie Mayr, okay? And then somebody come on and I'm sorry, if I'm mispronouncing it, Chrissie, I'm really not, she'll probably never watch this anyway. Because truthfully, I'm so far beneath her. That's, okay, y'all, that's part of what I find amusing too, is that I'm so far beneath Chrissie Mayr in number of viewers and views that I get and a following and having like any kind of, any kind of credibility as a YouTuber or commentator. She's so far beyond me. She's so far ahead of me in the game that's partly why I find it kind of like amusing and like, really, when she gets so pissed off at a very occasional comment that I make on her Twitter and then she retweets it, amplifying it to a much larger audience. She retweets it, of course, yes, saying it was the most despicable thing she'd ever seen and all of that. And then a bunch of people pile on with examples of how horrible I am. But there's a part of me that's just kind of amazed, so because she is so far beyond me in this game. So whatever, there's a part of me that's like, well, even though she's retweeting me in a really negative way, she's retweeting me. So I don't know, but that wasn't my goal actually in this exchange. So let me just boil it down to its essential components. Some of you are like, I don't know who Chrissie Mayr is. Let me at least get a picture. You might recognize her. She's a very lovely lady. And actually, I think that she's generally very funny. So, like, here's the thing. A friend of mine that I work with is a big fan of hers. One second. I'm going to get an image up here. Get a good image here. A friend of mine that I work with is a big fan of hers, and he was telling me that he was going to a meet and greet that she was doing, or something like that she was doing in Dallas. And and he knew that I was into YouTube, being a colleague of mine, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to go meet Chrissie Mayr and whatever." And so I started following her on Twitter for that reason, and even sent her. We had like a very brief, cordial exchange about, I live sort of in the area, and I'd love to get together sometime and collaborate on a show or whatever. And she was nice and everything, but that was the extent of it. And so that's how I've been following her stuff. And that's the extent of what I know about her. I've never actually watched the show or listened to it. I just don't watch or listen to a lot of stuff, honestly. Most of the time, other YouTubers, I'm just not very aware of what they're saying, what's going on. But I did. There was, I say, about 2 months ago, and she is very anti-abortion, and she also just recently had a child, and so was very pregnant up until recently. And congratulations to her. But she's very pro-life. Sorry, did I say that? Yeah, very pro-life. And so she will tweet sometimes jokes, being a comedian, about abortion, and these jokes have a very pro-life slant, which is totally her right and fine, and she's a political comedian and whatever, right? But there was one thing that she tweeted that annoyed me, and it wasn't so much that it was an anti-abortion tweet. I mean, because I see those all the time and whatever. And I totally, by the way, and I'll talk about this in a minute, I totally understand why people are pro-life. I totally get the view that to a lot of people is an innocent baby and you're murdering it. I totally get it. I'm not trying to like evade that perspective. what I would say and will say in some other video, and have already said to a degree, and I talked about it on Tim Pool, and I've talked about it in the last couple of videos I've done a bit, is that I just think it's a lot more complicated than that. But someday in the near future, I'll do a video where I just talk about the abortion thing, and then I can feel like I've kind of put it away, perhaps. But she tweeted, this was like 2 months ago or whatever. She tweeted that she was watching a reality show and she just found out that her favorite character was pro-life, which the implication being, I mean, sorry, she was white. I'm going to get them confused. She tweeted that she was watching a reality show and her favorite character was pro-choice or pro-abortion, however she put it. But that was okay because he was low IQ. He was, she said, but in his case, that's probably a good thing. Meaning he's so dumb or whatever. We don't want his, genetics to continue. Basically, like it's a good thing since he, that he's pro-choice, because then no more, no kids from him, basically. And it's not like that incensed me or anything, but I just thought it was kind of a dumb joke. And then the other thing was, I feel like among some of my pro-life commentator friends online, and I'm not speaking about Brett Dasovic, by the way, or anyone I've encountered at Timcast or Pop Culture Crisis. I'm really not, but I'm talking about some other people that I see on Twitter and stuff. That there is this, that a number of them have this, I think, prejudice that people with a pro-choice perspective, people who are not pro-life, that basically they're just completely like morally depraved, or they're just completely out of touch with reality. And there's no way that like a reasonable, good, intelligent person could look at the abortion debate and come down with a pro-choice position. And so when I looked at the tweet, it's not like I was like, oh my God, this is terrible or whatever. I thought it was really an unexceptional tweet. But as we do when we're on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, sometimes you'll comment, and sometimes you'll comment out of agreement. Sometimes you'll comment out of exasperation. Sometimes you're just like tired and you don't even know why you're commenting. And so in a reply to that tweet about, oh, this character on this show, he's pro-choice, but that's okay in his case, or good in his case, or whatever. I basically, in a short reply, just basically called her out for telling a not funny joke, and saying something like, oh, how traumatizing. I don't even remember what I said, but something like, oh, how traumatizing for you, or how hard for you. Sorry you had to go through that, or something like, just totally. It wasn't even a good reply on my part. That's the other thing that's so funny to me, y'all, is that this woman then, Chrissie, she then gets into it with me based on the comment I made wasn't even like intelligent. It was kind of just dumb. And so, but then she responds to it, and she's all pissed off, and she's giving it all this attention, and then some of her followers are piling on. They're giving it all this attention and whatever. And so then I thought, well, okay, since I'm already into this, I regretted getting into it, but I thought, well, since I'm already into this, then I'll go ahead and give a full answer on where I'm coming from with abortion. Really, my intention was not even to do that. It was just to basically say, dumb joke, which we can say on Twitter. I'm sorry. Who am I to her? I'm such a nobody. But so anyway, then I give in a tweet like kind of my long, spiel summarizing my philosophy on the abortion rights debate, and trying to answer some of the things that they had brought up in a really like sort of, comedic, stupid way that they had expressed it. And anyway, one of the things that I said in my reply is that I just felt like it was not right to force women to go through the physically difficult and even traumatic experience of childbirth or pregnancy, and what it can do to the females' bodies. And that's not to say that every woman has this horrible experience. And it's not to say that I'm discounting also the pain that a fetus in later months at least might feel from being killed. Okay, again, we've talked about all that. But that was the point that I was trying to make. And that's one of the things that, as a pro-choice person, I really do keep trying to emphasize to people, that I respect, in many instances, the pro-life position for people who are really being genuine about it. And it's not just political posturing, but that there is like a whole other being there, and there are very serious things going on with pregnancy and childbirth. And I talked about this a lot in my last video or two, so check it out, or live stream. And so then her response to that, one of her followers said, first of all, that I had satanic reasoning, that pointing out that pregnancy and childbirth can be very difficult on women's bodies and that maybe they shouldn't have to do that, that was, quote, satanic reasoning. And then to that, Chrissie Mayr says, oh yeah, something to the effect of, oh yeah, it's so hard being pregnant. I actually had to give up alcohol for several months, and that's so barbaric. And then they just kind of laughed and moved on. And this is like some long thing that I'd written out, which is fine against Twitter. Who gives a fuck, right? But it's some long thing I'd written out. And her response was to basically say, oh, come on. It's no big deal physically being pregnant or giving birth. You just have to give up alcohol for a little while. What an idiot, So you might say, and then this is what she did that I thought was so perplexing too. Then she retweeted something I had said, amplifying it a lot. And I just thought, wow, this was just an insignificant reply that some nobody, in my case, was making to one of her jokes. And she just like put all this attention on it. Okay, so that happened like 2 months ago. This is such a stupid story, I know. But that happened like 2 months ago or whenever. And I had mentioned before, when I was talking to Brett Dasovic about it, when we were talking on the live stream one night, I mentioned that I regretted it just because it was a really pointless encounter. And I do regret that initial, I don't even want to call it like a fight, right, or conflict, but I do regret that initial encounter because I just think it was pointless and then there was no point. But the other night, last night or the night before, Chrissie Mayr, she had her kid, her baby, and congratulations. Several days ago, or 5 days ago, as she was very quick to remind me. And she's been tweeting all kinds of, y'all, if you look at her Twitter, for months, she's been tweeting all of these different irreverent motherhood jokes and pregnancy jokes. And she's even been tweeting stuff about how her kid is going to be a racist, that it's so nice to bring another beautiful racist into the world. And no, she doesn't mean literally. It's a joke about the fact that because of some of her political views, which I probably in a lot of ways would agree with in terms of, the debates about Black Lives Matter and stuff, that because of some of her views, her critics like to say she's a racist. So it was a joke about basically, it was like a poke at her critics. I have no problem with that. But she's been making all these jokes about how her baby's going to be a racist. And so my point is that it's been a very irreverent, as a comedian, and that's great. It's fine. I would expect that, but it's been a very irreverent stream of jokes and comments on Twitter. And also when the woman is expressing her political beliefs, she does it, and I am the same way, but does it in a very strong way. So my point being that this is sort of the last person that I would feel like I needed to be tiptoeing around in making an occasional comment. I have not commented on Chrissie Mayr's Twitter page since that initial encounter, or that bad encounter that went awry 2 months ago. I have intentionally, even when there's things at times that she's posted, I've thought, okay, just whatever. But yeah, the other night she posted about how the pain of childbirth, the experience of childbirth, is like having a truck run over your private parts. Now, I might have gotten the wording a little bit off or whatever, but that's what she said. And of course, it's a fine joke. Don't have a problem with that. We know childbirth is very painful. Thank you, by the way, then, for conceding that childbirth is torture, which is what they were freaking out about the other 2 months ago. One of them, not Chrissie, but one of her supporters, saying that I had a satanic interpretation of things and I was depicting childbirth as torture. I mean, and that's the thing that gets me. And that's why I ended up responding to what Chrissie said, and I'll tell you in a minute. But that is one of the things that gets me, is when people in an argument are being disingenuous and they refuse to concede things that are blatantly obvious, such as, for many women, the process of pregnancy and childbirth entails a lot of, yes, suffering. Now, we could get into a debate about, does that then supersede, the considerations of the fetus, or what does God think about that, or nature, or whatever? And those are very complicated conversations that I've done in my other videos and will do again and what have you. But when she said that, I thought about it and I was like, do I not want to say something? But I really felt like it was such an obvious instance of Hello, this was the point I was trying to make, that I thought, you know what, I'm going to say it that way. I feel like I've said it, and some of our mutual supporters who followed that debate 2 months ago that we had, they'll see this, and you know what, maybe it'll make an impression on someone in some way. And I knew the downside would be that I get a lot of people hating on me, and that she would freak out. She was, I have to say, quite predictable in freaking out and retweeting me, and again, amplifying me. Although I know that she thinks it was just to expose me to derision and humiliation, but I fully expected all of that's come my way with that today, and it's not a big deal. I'm not getting on here to to complain. I'm more just kind of amazed. And so I did have, and I see your super chats. Thank you. I'm going to get to you in just a minute. I did have some of my supporters, particularly people who've been around for a bit, messaging me or saying, "Are you okay? Um, and I feel bad about this or what happened or whatever." And totally, like, you don't need to feel that way, because I totally expected that she was going to freak out based on the last time. And so she retweeted me and she said, I want to get the wording right on this, on the retweet. I should just put it up here, but you can look it up or not look it up yourself or whatever. But she retweeted the part where I said, I thought you said that giving up alcohol is the only hard part of the process, so we should force women to have babies. That was my tweet. But then, so she retweets me, and she says this. She says, "This is the most vile, disgusting, despicable thing I've ever seen. Imagine wanting to debate abortion with a mother of a 5-year-old baby. This," now talking about me, "is a person who is hurting, probably because they regret having an abortion. Go fuck yourself." I do kind of like it, actually. I have to say. I don't mean like pissing her off. I just mean the message. The lady has, I'll give her this, she has balls. And she's a smart lady. Again, like, I enjoy her tweets 99% of the time or whatever. But I just had to call this out because it was so in opposition to what she said to me then in that previous fight or whatever argument, that just made my jaw drop. It was the same feeling I had when Tim Pool suggested to me that if women had not been ruined by modern life, they would all want to have 15 children. And he said that, like, unironically, and the 15 was not hyperbolic. I mean, he was just, that was where we were at in the conversation. And so when someone says something like that to me, and with such confidence that, like, there's no way that I'm wrong on this, I just have to think, like, what? And I have to call it out. All right, let me look at my super chats, and then I'm going to say a few more things. Jocelyn says, "I'm the girl with the long dreads from the Manson page on IG. I know you. Happy to make a second live stream." Yes. And Jocelyn, I've been telling her she should do her own. I mean, I think everybody should start a YouTube channel for another reason than it's just kind of a nice thing to dabble in. But yeah, you should do that, Jocelyn. Thank you. Hello, my friend. Dan Campbell says, "Standard tribal responses to anyone with opinions outside of her worldview, but it wasn't necessary for her to be discourteous." Thank you so much, Dan. One of my biggest supporters here. Well, let me just say, in fairness, though, I mean, this is a woman, and I know you're not suggesting otherwise, but this is a woman who is known for being very, like me in a lot of ways, like, very, like, to the jugular, I should say, in her comments, and that's her brand, and that's what works for her, and she's generally, like I said, I think very funny. And I understand too, let me just say as well, that when someone is going through, not from firsthand experience, I've never been pregnant or had a kid, but that when someone is going through, I'm sure, those types of really significant life changes of pregnancy and childbirth, I know that it makes certain things a bit more raw. Okay. And so I get that. And to the extent that she perceived any sort of, like, insensitivity on my part in bringing in engaging with her that way right after she's had a baby, I am sorry if I stepped over the line there. But like I said in my response to her, when someone is just constantly making all of these really irreverent comments and jokes about abortion, about motherhood, about pregnancy, about all these things, and I think, who am I? I'm just some insignificant person on Twitter, and I make one little comment, every couple of months, and then it's like a 5 alarm fire or whatever for her. I just don't get it. But anyway, So yeah, you know, how do I want to put this? I am aware that it seems weird to some people or some of my viewers who've been following me with the Marilyn Manson stuff, and I was focusing a lot on the Me Too stuff, Johnny Depp, and all of that. I am aware that there is a discomfort with a number of them when I get into political stuff, and particularly something like abortion, which I know I have a lot of pro-life viewers and people that have a very like serious legitimate position, and that if I were with you, in a room and we were just chatting, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we would actually have a lot of common ground on. um but the thing, and so I think that there are a number of my viewers, when I did the Tim Pool appearance and abortion came up as a topic, and it really became more of a discussion than I expected it would. I got some comments after that, that from a number of people, not necessarily my viewers, but just people commenting on the video about, how offensive they found some of my comments and some of my observations. And I really did perceive at that point that I was kind of to a fork in the road where I was either going to need to commit to disclosing some of my more controversial political opinions and really just sort of leaning into that, or saying to myself, okay, I want to get along with this tribe and this, or I want to not make big waves on unnecessarily on controversial topics. So I'm just going to kind of not discuss this, not lean into it. And I thought about it both ways, but I just really feel like, honestly, there are not a lot of there are not a lot of women from a right of center position who are pro-choice, or I should say that's actually not right statistically, but who are, we should say, publicly pro-choice, or right of center commentators, political commentators, who are not just pro-choice, but who are really strongly pro-choice, who are out there talking about it and saying, yes, I'm libertarian in a lot of my perspectives. No, I'm not a Marxist or anything like that. I'm not a left-winger. I am more to the right than to the left. But also, I think that there are very legitimate arguments to be made for the pro-choice position. And I don't see, honestly, a lot of people out there making those arguments, or making them in a way that I think is intelligent. And so I really do feel like, some people say, well, what's the point? You just have a real need to get out there and support baby killing. No, but I do think that it's a really complicated, thorny issue. The issue of how to think about a fetal life in pregnancy is something that people have been arguing about for thousands of years, and that for large parts of human history, it was not only acceptable to abort, but in certain cultures, even infanticide. And and I hesitate to say that. People say, oh no, you're promoting infanticide, but I'm just saying that these are very thorny things. And so, and also at the same time, there actually is a lot of common ground. And so while you might have fewer people like me who would permit abortion through the entire pregnancy, you have a lot of people who do recognize that what you see in the first month or two or whatever, right, of the pregnancy is something that looks less recognizably human, and is not cognitively advanced, is not nearly as advanced as the animals that we kill to put on our plates. And so a lot of people, I think, are much more okay, and the polls show this, with the pro-choice position in the first trimesters, right? For some, it's the first trimester. For some, it's the second trimester for a lot of people. And that's where the 15-week figure became so popular, in European countries, number of European countries, for example, 12 to 13 weeks, or in America. So I don't want to talk about that anymore, because I actually wanted to shift gears and talk about the latest with Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm going to keep talking about this topic, because for some reason I am drawn to it. And I know that some people are going to think it's because I've had an abortion. And y'all, I don't care if people think that, because here is the honest truth, is that even though I guess because I've been super, super careful my whole life in terms of birth control, because I take it so seriously, I have never been pregnant, or at least that I know of, right? Um, and So I have never had to make that choice. But I'll tell you this, and this is true. If I had been faced with that choice, I would have had an abortion. Um, do I think that it is more questionable in the later months of pregnancy? Perhaps. Yes, perhaps so. And I'll tell you this, throughout most of my reproductive life, up until through now, I have taken pregnancy tests very regularly, at home pregnancy tests. I've taken them very regularly because I thought, I know I don't want to have a child. I'm using birth control responsibly, but if something happens, I want to be able to take care of it and get an abortion when I feel much better about it ethically. So I recognize that there is a gray area, and in a number of ways, it's similar to the gray area that we have when it comes to the issue of consent and sex. Everybody or almost everybody agrees that someone very young, like a 10-year-old, is way completely off limits. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum. Most rational people still understand that 20 is a decent age of consent. And so, in between that, we have this process, and it's very hard to say at which point there is a clear line of delineation between something and between something else. And so, we have this same kind of, if you're thinking about philosophy, the same kind of ontological argument really going on in certain ways when we talk about fetal development. And so, for a number of reasons I don't want to get into and talk about right now, the line for me is birth. For others, it's 15 weeks. For others, it's less. And yes, for some, it's the moment of conception. So I get it. I just don't understand why Chrissie Mayr keeps freaking out at my stupid, insignificant replies. I'm nobody compared to you, lady. That's why it's so funny. This is the most despicable thing I've ever seen. Really? In all your years of being a political lightning rod? Seriously? Okay. Moving on. Marilyn Manson. So, yeah, Evan Rachel Wood deleted her Instagram, or her Instagram is gone. And so a number of people were celebrating, which is fine. Look, any instance for celebration, I guess, in this situation is fine. People get some encouragement. But they were celebrating it like it was some kind of sign, perhaps, that Evan Rachel Wood has been in some way defeated or deflated in this never ending battle to the death, figuratively speaking, with Marilyn Manson. You know what it reminds me of? And this is actually, if Manson's watching, you're probably not going to find this funny, honestly. You probably find it irritating. But because it's your life and you're living the hell, I get it. But Superman 2, the old Superman, I'm sorry, with Christopher Reeve. Was it Superman 2 where those people come back in dominatrix outfits? You'll know what I'm talking about. Like there's 3 of them and they've got these like black like leather or like PVC like cat suits on, and one of them's a woman. It's a woman and 2 men. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Well, anyway, at the end, 2 of them get into a fight or something, and they get frozen in time like forever. If I'm remembering it right, they get frozen in time like forever, just flying through space in this sort of like, well, it's hard to explain, but they get trapped in this like cube, and then they just like float through space for eternity, something like that. It's like a prison floating through space. But anyway, 2 of them are at each other's throats, as I remember, and they're just locked in this never-ending, eternal battle at each other's throats. I know it's not a perfect analogy, but I kind of feel like that with the Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood thing. It's like, how much longer is this man going to be held hostage in this fight? And I have to think that there's a part of Evan Rachel Wood that really wishes, and maybe this is part of what's to account for her Instagram going away. We'll see. We'll see if it comes back or not. But there has to be a part of her, even as self-delusional as she is and unwilling to admit to reality, there has to be a part of her that really regrets that she got this whole thing started, because she could have just sailed through the last this shit started in 2021. Well, actually, we know that it did not. We know that it started a year or 2 before that. And really going back, I mean, we know that it really started in 2016 when she started talking about her supposed sexual abuse, and then started testifying and trying to get laws passed and all of that. But the overt stuff started in 2021 with her coming out with these other women against Manson, and then the chain of events that have followed, where she did these TV appearances and then he sued her. And then she got all of this bad publicity, which she has gotten a lot of bad publicity as well, and not just from someone less significant like me, but really bad publicity in a lot of ways. And it's got to be exhausting, and all the money that she's got to be throwing at Sean, OJ Simpson's former attorney, throwing at her. I just think there's got to be a part of Rachel Wood that in her most honest moments or whatever, she's like, I'm so sick of this. I wish that I hadn't done it. She could have just sailed through making movies, doing Broadway, doing all the stuff that she's doing. I mean, I guess she hasn't lost roles, although we don't really know that. There's a part of me that wonders perhaps if, I mean, after Westworld, she hasn't really had anything huge, right? I know she's done some movies and she did a Broadway thing, but like there's a part of me that wonders if, even though Manson was the one who was canceled, we're starting to see a kind of a shift where people, it's sort of like they look at Amber Heard in the industry like, oh, she's just whatever happened there with those two, she's tainted. And do you hear those stories about losing custody of her kid and the FBI faking the FBI? What's up with all of that? I hear she's like another Amber Heard. Like, people are saying that in the industry, and I know that. I have verified that with people, not people I'm saying affiliated with Manson. I'm talking about just some people that I've talked to who are either kind of big in the entertainment industry or who are connected with people who are. And I've asked them, what is the feeling when the tone of the conversations, if and when Marilyn Manson comes up? Not that everybody's like out there talking about him, right? Oh, that they were, honestly. But when it comes up or whatever, what is the tenor of it? And people have told me that it's basically like, that whole thing just smells bad. Like I don't know if he's guilty or if he's not, or but she's weird. There's something. She's got that on her. She's got that on her, and I don't see how unless the DA files charges against Manson, which we know he's not going to, and I've talked about that a lot of my videos. But in lieu of that, there's nothing that's going to happen to unsully her reputation and the feeling that people have about her. It's just this sordid. So I don't know. It's interesting. It is interesting that she's gotten herself into this, and that I don't think it has done her any favors. It gave her some temporary dopamine hits to be able to go out and do her interviews and conjure people's sympathies and speak before Congress and get a law passed and stand there, in her scholarly glasses, with her feminist bob and whatever, and get their picture taken out in front of the Capitol building. Yeah, it felt good for a minute, but there has been a powerful hangover to this situation, and she continues to experience it, and I don't really think it's going to abate. I just wonder how Evan Rachel Wood feels about the documentary that's coming out soon. We know there's going to be a documentary, I would say in the next couple of months, a 3-part documentary series about Manson, and it's going to look at the allegations against him, in addition to like a retrospective on his career, which I'm sure will not be entirely flattering. But it's going to get into the allegations, and I think she's going to be a big part of that. I don't know how overtly, or if they're interviewing her. I heard from a source that may not be credible that she was going to be a pretty big part of this, and that she might even be introducing new allegations or something. I don't know, but I just wonder if now where things are at, I guess is what I have to say, is that I am surprised that she has not spoken out against Manson going on tour with Five Finger Death Punch. I really am surprised. And it's kind of humbling, actually, to admit that I was wrong on this, because one of the things that I've been so frustrated with Manson about, in terms of frustrated that he's not doing more aggressive PR, is I thought that at any point he announced some kind of career move, he would have this woman on the warpath just constantly beating the drums. And she has stayed completely quiet, has she not? So that in and of itself does sort of suggest an interpretation that in some way this woman hasn't gotten the message to a degree. I don't know if it's legally or what's going on. I don't think anything's going on right now much with a lawsuit, but I could be wrong, or things going on behind the scenes. Or maybe she's just not getting as much work. Like I said, maybe there are roles that she's wanting that she's not getting. Or maybe her agent is telling her, shut the up. Or maybe her lawyers. But Evan Rachel Wood is certainly not behaving as a woman who is all fire and brimstone and balls to the wall in her pursuit of justice against Marilyn Manson and exposing Brian Warner and all of that. So And of course, we know that she lost custody of her son because of all her crazy antics. And so, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, because we were only privy to a small number of documents through the Tennessee courts, because that's where she ran away to when she kidnapped her child and withheld him from his father. But there was this whole thing that happened in California, ongoing custody disputes and negotiations and so forth, that we aren't privy to. So who knows? Maybe she's been told by the family courts to shut the fuck up. I don't know. But it's interesting to see the IG go away. I just don't want to prematurely celebrate, but maybe it's just a celebration just to see her off the internet for a few days. I don't know. So Johnny Depp, Jean Dubarry. Oh, I want to say one more thing too, actually, about Marilyn Manson. So I did make a comment like a week ago about how I don't think it does him favors for people to keep talking about his sobriety, in the sense that, oh, we're so glad now that, like, everything's fine now because he's sober. Or when it gets brought up, like, why are you touring with Manson or whatever? Like, I appreciate what that Zoltan Bathory guy said of FFDP, but I'm just saying, like, in general, the problem that I see with the continuing to talk about his sobriety is that it feels like an admission of prior guilt. And maybe that's just me, but it almost feels like people are saying, well, he was a monster when he was drunk, when he was drinking or drugging or whatever, but now that he's sober, we don't have to worry about him doing abusive shit to women anymore. And I know that's not what people are meaning to say, and I'm not calling out his fans for just being happy about his sobriety, because it's a huge milestone and you should be happy that this guy is healthier and happier. But I don't know, sometimes when I see some of the articles and the way it's sort of depicted, I just wonder if that's how a lot of people are going to see it. Is like, it almost sounds like people are saying, well, yeah, we can have him on tour because now he's under control, because he's not a wild, drunken beast now, basically. So I don't know. Y'all can tell me what you think. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I certainly at times am probably a little too critical on certain things. Johnny Depp, Jean Dubarry. So yeah, it is opening. It seems like his career is doing fine. I don't know what's going on with Pirates of the Caribbean, but it sounds like last reports were that they were interested in him, but he was saying no thanks. Don't call me, I'll call or you or something, right? I know that I know there was a podcast that what's his name, Alex Mostros, did, trying to basically suggest that the verdict that we got in Virginia was the result of Saudi Arabian bots. But I don't think that really made an impression. And I think that I don't know if Amber Heard will have any kind of a comeback or not. People do have pretty short memories. If you let enough years go by, people really lose a sort of emotional investment in why they disliked you and so forth. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to me that she could have some kind of a comeback, but she's never going to be like Miss Aquaman again. And so, I think in that sense, her career is done. And I think Johnny Depp's will continue to get better. I noticed that there were some catty articles about the fact that Johnny Depp's director in Jean Dubarry, Maïwenn Besco, that she was talking in an interview about how Johnny was often trying to give her feedback for how a scene should be done or whatever. And then the interviewer asked, well, how helpful were his comments? And she said they were never helpful or something. I don't know, because you're dealing with translation stuff here too. Who knows how exactly someone said something or if they were joking. But my point being that I still see the media trying to kick up, as you do, trying to kick up some negative PR about Johnny Depp, but it's hard to read what's going on in his life as anything but a really solid comeback. And he directed that movie about the artist Modigliani, right? Modi. And I know there's some controversy about the life of the artist and so forth, but like that's a big thing to direct an artsy film like that, major actors. If it does well, he could have a whole new career in front of him as a director, which honestly I think is better than a career as an actor anyway. And so yeah, I think he's good. I mean, who knows what's going on in his personal life, but I think he's good in terms of this whole mess that he has been through. So what is left? Okay, Trump. I did a video a week and a half ago. I think it was a stream where I talked about how I felt like the right wing, the Republican Party, was really going astray in some areas pertaining to women, or at least their messaging toward women. And you can go look that up yourself. But one of the things that I mentioned in that video, and I was talking about the fact that I'm a centrist, somewhat right of center right now, based on how the political map looks, but somewhat right of center, and that, but a swing voter, because there have been a number of times when I've supported Democratic candidates for various things, including president and Obama in 08, but that I also voted for Trump in 2016. Now, I didn't vote for anyone in 2020, as I've talked about, because I just didn't have really a lot of enthusiasm at that point for anyone. And it's a whole other video, but I was displeased with Trump about a number of things, including it seemed like his really wishy-washy COVID policy that then eventually just kind of went along with the authoritarianism of what we were seeing coming from the left wing. I just felt like he was not a leader during COVID. I felt like he was not a leader if you were a leftist, obviously, because he seemed so wishy-washy about deciding that COVID, it's not a big deal, it is a big deal, it's not serious, it's very serious. The messaging was just horrible from a left-wing perspective, but also from a libertarian perspective, he ended up going, am I wrong, going along with a number of what a lot of us think were I can't say it, authoritarian policies related to lockdowns and so forth, and had promoted the vaccine, and I believe continues to promote it, right? So I don't want to get into a COVID conversation, although I did do several videos on it in which I explain my position. So I will link to those below after this video. You might find it interesting. Get a kind of a time capsule, like a blast from the past. There was one of them where I was in my car, and it's just me just like ranting, like not going anywhere, but just sitting there and like ranting about masks and stuff. So I know some of you think that's crazy. I have some New York viewers, Cuomo supporters, who like my Justice for Cuomo vids, but don't love my position on the vaccine. But anyway, where was I going with all that? So I voted for Trump in 2016, didn't vote for anyone in 2020. And here's where I'm at right now. I think that Biden is a huge joke, and I cannot see myself voting for him. So I just don't think I'll vote for Biden. I just don't think there's any chance. I can tell you there's no chance. But to what extent I'm going to be motivated to go out and vote again, that for me is the pickle, because there are some things where I think, man, with the right. But here's my point, and this is what I'm coming to. Regardless of how I end up voting, or if I vote or whatever, I really think that all of these cases against Trump and all of these lawsuits and all of these prosecutors going after him and all that, I just think it's really a political loser for the Democratic Party. And it's not like I have some great illusions about Trump's nobility or his decency. I don't think he's a particularly good human being, probably. And I think that we have evidence of the fact that he's been, in some ways, like in his private life and with women and so forth, very like sort of reckless. But then again, so was Kennedy, and so were a lot of people that we respect as great presidents. I think Bill Clinton was a good president. Okay, that's another one. I was too young to vote back then, but I really supported Bill Clinton. And did you know, that looking back, that was one of the most fiscally responsible periods in our recent history. Now, I know that he did have Newt Gingrich and some of those conservatives at the time holding his feet to the fire. That was back when some people actually cared about the national debt and the deficits and budget. I remember like George H.W. Bush, the elder Bush, right? He got in deep shit because he had made a pledge that he was not going to raise taxes. Read my lips, no new taxes. But then he ended up raising taxes, and one of the reasons for that was ostensibly out of some concern about the budget getting out of control. Now, we could debate about whether you should raise taxes or not or whatever, and certainly that was a terrible political move, but I respect the balls that guy had. He was depicted, George H.W. Bush, George Bush the elder, he was depicted as being this weak, wishy-washy, past his prime, put him out to pasture president. But he actually did a number of things that took courage. For instance, in the first Gulf War, when we went into the Middle East or took our troops into the Middle East and kicked Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, there were a lot of pressures on George Bush the elder to go into Baghdad, not him literally, but to order the US military to chase Saddam Hussein all the way to Baghdad and then to depose him and to do what we ended up doing later on, like temporarily taking over the country. And he chose not to do that because he thought that the costs outweighed the benefits, the risks, and that were not worth taking. And that it was enough to just push him back, right? And he turned out to be right. And the same thing, with the taxes. I'm not saying he was right or not to raise taxes, but I'm saying like it was a courageous thing. Politicians today just don't have that kind of courage. I don't think Donald Trump, for all of his brashness, I know certainly Biden doesn't, but Donald Trump, for all of his brashness, I don't think he has the courage. No one has the courage to deal with the problem of debt now. And the reason for that is because one of the big flaws with democracy, and yeah, like Churchill said, it may be the best of all the shitty systems of government that we have, but one of the major flaws with it is that you have to basically buy votes. Like people generally, they want more benefits, more stuff. And it's not like I'm any different than anyone else. I don't hold myself out, as some more noble human being, but I'm just saying that nobody wants their own stuff to be cut. And the biggest voting bloc, as you know, it is elderly people in terms of who actually votes, who's most influential. And, that's where the biggest entitlements are. And then you have defense as well. So, if you look at a pie chart of the US budget, what you're going to see is it's basically more or less, it's basically into fourths, and 1/4 is Social Security, 1/4 is Medicare, 1/4 is defense, military, and then you have the growing other section of other things, but a lot of interest on the debt. In fact, didn't I read recently that the interest on the national debt now, the yearly interest, it is close to or surpassing Social Security expenditures. I mean, we are into crazy land with our debt, but that's a whole other topic. My point, though, after all of this, is just to say that I don't have any illusions about Donald Trump being like any kind of, savior or any kind of particularly good or even like super intelligent human being or anything like that. Okay. I don't. But I do think that like a lot of people, when we see this man is just seemingly one thing after another being held to standards by some of these prosecutors, and people like and that god awful Letitia James, the same woman who participated in that scam Me Too hoax witch hunt against Andrew Cuomo. But what she's doing with Trump, a lot of other people have covered it with a lot more intelligence than I can or will. But I'm just telling y'all, it looks fishy. All of this stuff looks fishy, and whatever the real merits, it's really bad politics, and it really will increase, I think, a lot of sympathy with voters because, there may be a lot of people who hate Trump, although that group is shrinking. And you look at someone like Michael Rappaport. Michael Rappaport, the actor from, I'm trying to think of the stuff he's been in. So if you ever saw the movie Copland with Sylvester Stallone, that's one Michael Rappaport is in. He's done some other stuff, kind of more of like a character actor, I guess. But he was one of the biggest anti-Trump celebrities on the internet for the past, however many years. I mean, even people who didn't know him from his acting or as a celebrity would just know him from some of his Twitter rants, his anti-Trump Twitter rants, and the pictures that he would post of like Trump with like a ball gag on and stuff like that. Michael Rappaport now, though, says he is not going to vote for Biden and probably going to vote for Trump. He says it's on the table, but you can see by the way that he's talking about it now that he's going to vote for Trump. So anyway, my point being, though, is that you may have a number of people who hate Trump, but you know what people hate more than Trump? They hate the government, and they hate the feeling of that someone is being persecuted by the government. And they don't like these Me Too accusers either. Okay? I don't know for a fact, certainly, what happened between, if anything, or if anything happened between Trump and Jean Carroll or whatever, but I know that that is a ridiculous woman who has said a litany of ridiculous things and acted in a completely non-credible manner and made certain allegations that were provably false, such as talking about, wearing a dress that apparently hadn't even been developed yet and various things. My point just being that people look at all of this and they just think that it's a mess and they think that these are just political gotcha games because the lawyers seem to be the group that benefits most from all of these different types of witch hunts. And we certainly see that with the Me Too stuff, like with Marilyn Manson and some of these other cases. So I don't think the Trump stuff is a good look. Now, people have been talking the last week about Trump's position on abortion. I'm about to round things off here and say goodnight. But they've been pointing out about how he's not going to go. He has stated now that he's not going to pursue a federal ban on abortion. Which, frankly, if you think that it is murder, if one really does think that that is unequivocally murder, then it seems like, it would be within your rights to federally ban it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that I don't want that to happen because I'm pro-choice and because I have a much more complicated view on things. But I get that. But at the same time, Trump is a really shrewd politician, whatever you think of him. And he can see what a lot of people can see, that this issue is really a turkey for the GOP. And it's one of the few turkeys they have against them. Because frankly, most of the issues that people care about now are very well aligned toward the Republicans, toward the side of Trump. And you have figures like RFK also, who are coming in with their own critiques of the status quo. But most of the issues are very favorable for the Republican candidate, but abortion is really not. And what you find too with people is that even a number of people who maybe are mostly pro-life in their own personal sentiments, there's still something that a lot of them are resistant to in terms of actually drawing a line in the sand and saying, we're going to make this illegal, or we're going to refuse women's access to this or whatever, because I think most people still sense that there's some kind of a possible gray area. Anyway, you can look at my other videos where I get into this. And like I said, sometime, probably sooner than later, I will actually sit down and do a well thought out, extensive video on my position on abortion and some other things. But I talk about a degree in some of my latest streams. So I will connect to those below. I'll also put the COVID videos there if anybody wants to have a time capsule to the past and see what people were talking about back then as I rant away about COVID stuff. But I'll put the links in the comments below. I don't think I can put it in the description now after the fact, but I'll put it in the comments below. Did I miss any super chats? I did. Jocelyn says, I'm wondering how ERW's son is, if he's okay. I wonder if and how his father is helping him with his fear of Manson. It sounded like she really scared him. Yeah, so some of my viewers who are not familiar with the Manson case and Evan Rachel Wood and all of her craziness might not know that there are a number of court documents, official court documents, where it is alleged, particularly by her ex-partner, and the child's father, Jamie Bell, that Evan Rachel Wood was scaring this child by basically turning Marilyn Manson into the boogeyman and telling the child that they couldn't do fun things, and that basically the kid couldn't even see his dad because because the Manson threat was out there. Although then once she lost custody of the child, then the story flipped and it became, oh, well, he can't be around me. My kid can't be around me because I'm too vulnerable. Proximity to me will make him too vulnerable to an attack by Marilyn Manson. So ridiculous. It was interesting watching her on with that Parvani lady, am I saying her name right? But anyway, the psychologist that did a sit-down podcast with Evan Rachel Wood, and they talked about narcissism surviving Marilyn Manson. And most of the time, the psychologist is just kind of like nodding along or, engaging in a reciprocal conversation. But the part where Evan Rachel Wood starts explaining kind of haltingly and bizarrely her reasoning for why she claims she voluntarily gave up custody of her child out of fear of Marilyn Manson, you can just see there's certain places where the psychologist is just looking at her, and the look in her eyes. I mean, she's sitting there, but it's just the look in her eyes. You can see she's just like trying to like make it make sense, but of course it doesn't make sense. Anyways, all right, I got to go, everybody. Long week in front of me, but yeah, I appreciate your support and I appreciate your contributions. My links will be put below in the comments section. And again, respect to everybody and to my pro-life viewers certainly as well. And I think one of the things that I would like to do actually when I do my video on abortion that I haven't done really yet is really steelman the oppositional argument, because I used to be pro-life. I was actually pro-life until college, until I had my procedure. No, I'm joking. Again, like, to me, it doesn't matter. I clarify again and say that I have never had an abortion because I know that for some people they'll think, oh, well, if she has, and that's why she thinks this, of course, like Chrissie Mayr. But the truth is, to me, even though I haven't, there's not personally a distinction, because like I said, if I'd been in the situation, I would have, right? So I don't feel any kind of moral or ethical exoneration from not having committed that act, right? So then again, it's like I said, it's the question of, though, what is the ethical nature of that act? And we'll talk about that. But one of the things I want to do is really, in my video, is really steelman the pro-life argument and say these are the best arguments, right, on this side, and then what do I think about them? And yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and we'll talk about some other things as well. So stay tuned. I'm still working, yes, on the Marilyn Manson documentary, and again, the plan is to keep working on it and until the big official one comes out, the Channel 4 documentary, and then I'll hurriedly finish mine up and put mine out as kind of an answer to it. So we'll see. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a month, 2 months, but I will have something hopefully decent to put out as well on that topic. Okay, bye everybody. See you later. Have a good night.